Greetings, everybody. Welcome to a impromptu version of the Breakfast Club. Got that funk here, of course, and that's my friend Rob, DevShell 2, Boobs McGee, and other gender fluid titles that rode on the day. How are you, Rob?
I'm hanging in there. How you doing?
I'm not getting a lot of sleep, as I'm sure is the same for pretty much everybody in America. But at the same time, I'm actually in better spirits than I should be considering the gravity of the situation. Because I know we talked for 7 hours on Saturday night, and one might think that we exhausted the topic, but I think we have. And obviously, there's been new revelations and stuff since we spoke on Saturday.
I don't know if they qualify as new revelations. I mean, it's just confirmations of things we already basically knew.
Or suspected. Yeah, I agree. Like the coordination level, and but I mean, I want to start off anyway, specifically because I watched the impeachment debates. I watched the Republican members of the House stand up and say their stuff. And the most common theme among the Republican apologists for Trump, or I should put it a different way, amongst the Republicans in the House of Representatives who chose not to vote for impeachment, most of them come down in two categories. Either, we need to unify the country, or the process was being rushed. Now, the whole unify the country thing is self-evidently bullshit coming from the people it's coming from, because they've never spent 5 minutes trying to unify the country over the past 5 years,
Right. They're the ones that created the division.
Yeah.
But I mean, it goes beyond. It goes beyond that. I mean, talk about revelations. There are things coming out. There are Republican congressmen who are saying on the record that a lot of their colleagues are voting the way they're voting because they're afraid for their lives. They're getting death threats, and their families
Right.
are getting threats. So they're afraid if they don't be the supportive Trump people, their wives or husbands or children are going to be are going to end up paying the price.
Yeah, and whilst that, that's obviously a serious concern, and if it was my family, I certainly wouldn't just go, oh well, people on the internet, or anything like that. I wouldn't just blow it off on the one hand, but one of the House representatives from Colorado, not my personal rep, but one of my state's reps, Jason Crow, said, "Yeah, welcome to Congress. This is what it's always like for Democrats. It's never not been like this over the past 5 years for Democrats." And that's especially true for some of the more high-profile Democrats like AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Eric Swalwell, Ted Lieu.
I absolutely agree, and I don't believe that the threat of death that they are receiving is a good enough excuse to excuse what they're doing. But it is a reason. And they may not be used to it, and they may not have understood that this is what Democrats have been dealing with for years. I mean, it goes beyond 5 years. I mean, this is what the right wing rhetoric has created, easily as far back as probably towards the end of Clinton's presidency, perhaps. The left is socialist and communist, and they're taking your guns, and a lot of their rhetoric has only become much more inflamed and serious, I guess, in the last few years.
Sure. I mean, there's a few things that some Republicans said when they stood up to object to the resolution that, like, basically in principle, I might have agreed with. So I want to talk first of all about some of the things that I might have agreed with, right? Like when they're standing up and saying, for example, that the process is being rushed. There's no hearings, there's no witnesses, blah, 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 to present testimony. There's no committee hearings, and so on. I actually think that's a legitimate complaint, except for the fact that this is an emergency situation, that Trump is going to be gone, and going to be gone in less than a week or a week from the time of the impeachment. And that was yet another strange thing some of these Republicans were saying, he's only going to be here for another week. Why are we doing this in such a hurry? the question answers itself. He's going to be here for another week. We got to get this done in a hurry, right?
Well, I mean, the no hearing and like no witnesses, a hearing isn't really needed, um, because everyone in Congress is a witness. They were there. They were the ones whose lives were in danger. What hearing for what? For them to discuss something that they all, every single one of them have seen with their own eyes. Um, so that doesn't hold a lot of water for me. Um,
I think the whole nation feels the same way you do, Rob, because basically they did this live on television, and for those of us who watched it happen live, it's unequivocal about it. I mean,
if they want to hold hearings, like as far as like a formality, as a ceremonial thing, that these are the things you're supposed to do before you get to the vote. Um, okay, I guess, but it just seems like a waste of time. Paul says hi. Where you going with that?
it's a kid.
No, it was the empty walker. Where's she going with it? He's gonna cry in there. I just took him out of there. That's why he's on the mat. He's fine. I can hear him. I got it. I'm doing my dad duties.
You're all right.
I mean, Republicans just said, show me an investigation and I'll be happy. But every one of the contested states investigated. Every one of them investigated. Every one of them did a recount. Georgia did 3 recounts. The vote is
And
the vote. Nothing was stolen. I mean, it's been proven that nothing was stolen unless you can
hang on a
getting more
second, Rob.
votes.
I have made it my policy, and I'm going to insist on it here. I will not entertain in the comments on this channel or my channel or on Twitter anyone who says the election was stolen from Trump. The matter has been settled as far as the law is concerned. And anybody else who wants to fucking throw their toys out of the pram and bitch about it can get back in the fucking pram, as far as I'm concerned. You have regressed to infancy if that's what you think. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? So, and anyway, so the argument though that there hasn't been sufficient due process in the impeachment would hold up if it were any other impeachment. I would agree with it. I would actually say, yeah, whoa, slow down, hold on. This due process is part of functioning democracy, and I totally get that argument. And another argument that I heard.
Well, I mean, not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you. The first impeachment of Trump, the House, I think, handled themselves the way they should have. It was the Senate that didn't. When they failed to call witnesses, the Senate didn't have any kind of a hearing. I
Right,
mean,
which is why the Republicans are total hypocrites.
Right, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
So yeah, and the thing that really gets me about the whole, well, the other argument I was going to say, which I had some sympathy for, was I can't remember which congressperson stood up and said it, but he's basically saying that oh damn it, you go ahead and say something else because it'll come to me.
Something else.
Yeah, it's the morning. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got no excuses. Carry on.
Morning fog. Is that what it is?
No, it's
or is it
fog.
Or is it old age fog?
Thanks, Fog. You're right. When you thought it was GAF, it's Goth at Funk. That's true. The GTF moniker was done by my fans way back in 2009, and I decided that there's no point arguing with the mob when it comes to YouTube anyway. So as regards the mob, what we're talking about from last week, though, as far as I'm concerned, every last one of them should fucking twist and swing. And I'm not really meaning capital punishment, although I don't know about you, but insurrection in the face of democracy, to me, is outrageous. I mean, if there was an insurrection to overthrow an actual tyrant, like if people were being disappeared in the night and everything like that, and like what let's talk about what almost happened, actually, because that so we know that there were people with inside knowledge of the Capitol grounds layouts. We suspected that on Saturday when we had our last conversation, but we know for a fact now that people had inside knowledge of the layout of the Capitol. They had assistance from people working in the Capitol. Whether those were congresspersons or not remains to be seen. But Ayanna Pressley's room, her office, had the panic buttons taken out. All right. And that not only requires access, that requires a set of tools, time to do it. You had to get in and out without being seen. I mean, come on, that's a serious level of coordination. And that's what I was going to say. The other argument that the guy stood up and said, which I thought would have had some merit in another situation, in a different impeachment. He said that's a lot of people came with there were IEDs outside the RNC and the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. So, and there were other pipe bombs. People brought Molotov cocktails and so on. So people came prepared to riot. And his argument was, how can you incite somebody for something they already intended to do? Right. And I kind of understand the almost logic of that. But the bottom line is, you could come with missiles and guns and then go home without using any of them.
Right. Well, I mean, another thing is Trump's incitement wasn't limited to just that one speech that morning. I mean, it's a cumulative effort over 5 years. He was claiming that he was being robbed or was robbed before he was even elected. He was claiming that the Democrats are stealing your country from you before he was even elected. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 5-year long, I mean, and as far as like the potential of hearings, maybe that is something that they should have had hearings about, and they could have said, here's the evidence of Trump's incitement, that he's been building this up over years. So.
I'm just going to reference CRB Vegas here. What was the impeachment even for? Was it for incitement? That's the legal term that they used. Personally, if I was in charge of drafting the resolution, I would have used the word abetting, because it's also illegal to abet an insurrection. And that's also language. The word incitement has a specific legal definition. And one of the reasons certain Republicans were objecting was specifically for the word incitement, because it has legal ramifications and a standard of proof which is kind of hard to meet, which is for me why I would have put abetting insurrection personally, because it's an open and shut case that he abetted insurrection. But because abetting just means to allow something to happen by inaction. So if you don't do something and to stop something that looks like it's going to happen from happening, you have abetted that situation. And I think that's kind of an unarguable thing where you can say Trump definitely did. I personally think it's a clear case of incitement as well, but I'm not for me. I mean, here's what happened. The president several times over the preceding weeks summoned people to Washington, D.C. In one of the tweets, he said, it's going to be wild, right? And you don't say it's going to be wild if you're planning a peaceful protest. There's nothing wild about walking down the street with a sign. That's not wild. And I would love if Trump ever had to face any kind of cross-examination about what happened on whether he was guilty of incitement or not. I would love it for Trump to actually stand there and explain what he meant by it's going to be wild, if he didn't mean for people to come down and get rowdy. Just like he said to people moments before they marched up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, he told them they're going to have to fight like hell or you're not going to have a country. Now, I really have to wait for Rob to get back before I make the next point. So instead of making the next point, I'm going to talk to some of my people here in the chat. So Space Frog, my thought is that the reason we're not seeing the really serious charges yet is might pardon them. They'll drop the serious charges once Trump is gone. I actually think that is very insightful. And here, Rob, I'll just put it back on the screen real quick. Have you got that? Anyway, I actually I think that's a very interesting take from Space Frog, and I actually had a different idea about it. My whole thing is, why did these Republicans, after the insurrection, but on the day of the vote, Why did they go back into the chamber and still maintain the lie when most of them had their lives risked? I mean, there was like 7 senators, 6 or 7 senators, and 130 odd House reps who still voted to overturn the election even after Congress was stormed. And I think there's an awful lot of people in the GOP, both in and out of Congress, who think that because there's more armed protests, and I'll talk about that further as well. There's more insurrection coming this weekend. They've advertised it. Everybody knows it. And I think there's some people in Congress who still think Trump might pull it off. So that's why they're hedging their bets. What do you think, Rob?
There's no way he could pull it off.
Sane people know this.
As I said, there's, I mean, even without the troops, I mean, there's, we're a nation of laws, and then there are things, there's ways that things progress. There's a legal progress to things. It's one of the reasons why Mike Pence could not do what Donald Trump wanted him to do. Um, there's a legal, you know, there's a legal process. So, it doesn't matter how much they scream, how much they yell. Joe Biden is going to be sworn in on the 20th, with or without an inauguration, with or without entertainment, with or without a parade, with or without the crowds. It doesn't, all he needs is a witness, a justice, and his hand.
That's
That's
right.
it. That's all he
That is all
needs.
he needs. I just want to reference this from CRB Vegas. How does anyone really think that impeachment based on incitement is going to be taken as a partisan nonsense? He thinks it's a reach. I don't necessarily think it's a reach. I think basically the sequence of events, and Rob is right, it's not just the speech he made beforehand that's incitement, but the tweets Trump announced for 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time to come to Washington, told people it was going to be wild, right? Um, and as an aside, Trump known or should have known that people were planning to storm the Capitol, because I knew that. And I don't even pay attention to the right wing. I'm not on any right wing sites. All I see is retweets on Twitter from right wingers, and I knew that. Oh,
It
so
is it is clear that yes, it was a riotous clusterfuck. Yes, it was. It was
and they plan
because
to riot,
because well, I mean, it was perpetrated by a lot of people who didn't have a fucking clue what they were doing. Even though there were military among them, there were police among them, there were still a lot of people didn't know what the fuck they were doing. I mean, even like from a protest point of view, from a protest standard. There are people on the left that watched that whole thing unfold and are saying, "The fuck is wrong with you guys? You're not wearing masks. You didn't bring food and water. You don't have medic tents set up." I mean, when the left protests, they have food and medics and everything of it. You're set. You're ready to hunker down for possibly days because they know what they're doing. And you have protection against being identified, protection against pepper spray and all kinds. I mean, they take it seriously. This
yeah.
was an angry clusterfuck.
Yeah. So I just really quickly as an aside, I see Phoenix Rider in the chat. She's been missing from the past 2 weekends of the Breakfast Club, and I'm very glad to see that you're out there because I was kind of worried you might have the coronavirus. So Phoenix, welcome to the show. Glad to see you back. Anyway, yeah, to what you were saying though, Rob. I mean, the clusterfuck is ongoing. The insurrection is ongoing. I have been losing my fucking shit at the TV all week long when they talk about the failed insurrection. And I'm shouting at the TV going, motherfucker, the insurrection hasn't failed until every single one of these fuckers is in jail and there's no more further actions. That's when it's failed. As long as people keep on deciding to keep trying to fight and, it's still an insurrection. Who knows how long this is going to last, right?
I agree to an extent. Um, there's always going to be people, and there always have been people who were anti-government, or anti whoever the ruling party is, and individuals that have done all kinds of things from um, assassination attempts, mailing bombs, all kinds of stuff. I don't necessarily consider that an ongoing insurrection, though. So there's
Well,
always going to be people.
here's my thing, Rob. Okay. Now I know that in the United States, the First Amendment guarantees you the right to protest and peacefully assemble to petition your government for redress of grievances. Right. I have relied on this part of the article of the amendment myself. I'm a protester and a proud one. And I also understand that the Constitution's next amendment gives people the right to bear arms. And I understand that in some states, they don't necessarily object to you doing both at the same time, i.e., protesting with your arms. I'm here to tell you one person at a protest with a gun is one person at a protest with a gun. 200 people marching together with arms is a fucking insurrectionist army. And this armed protest, in the current context, when Congress has just been stormed, there's no such thing as an armed protest. It's the second and third wave of the fucking attack. All right? That's just me. And I'm a pacifist.
Here's why CRB Vegas. Here's why we can look at it and see more than just a riotous clusterfuck. They brought equipment to take hostages. Their plan was to take hostages and to hold mock trials and potentially executions. That was the plan. For some of them, they planned this whole thing out as far as where to go inside the Capitol building. They had chanted about murdering certain people. Mike Pence, they wanted to kill. They wanted to kill Nancy Pelosi. I mean, they said these things. This isn't just a riotous clusterfuck. It was acts of war against the government done badly. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they killed a police officer on purpose.
They tried to kill a lot of them.
They tried to kill a lot of them, but I mean, there was one who committed suicide, and then there was the cop that they killed. They beat him with flagpoles and a fire extinguisher. There was a guy who was arrested yesterday who hit several officers with a fire extinguisher. One of them, he hit him in the head, wasn't wearing a helmet, and as from what I understand, it was not the same cop that was killed.
Right, and that guy who hit the cop with the fire extinguisher, who was arrested yesterday, was a firefighter. And that's something which maybe we should just take a little detour off real quick. The number of cops, ex-cops, state legislators from around the country who are sitting state legislators, former Marines, former Army officers among the insurrectionists is really, really, really disturbing to me.
Yeah, I mean, the day before the insurrection, I was going to say the protest, but it wasn't a protest. The day before the insurrection, the day before, a congresswoman took a tour of the Capitol building with the insurrectionist, which was a violation of the rules at the time because the Capitol building is closed for tours, even private ones. It's not something that they're permitting because of COVID. And she did it anyway. And this same congressperson, when it was happening, tweeted, "It's 1776."
Right. Yeah. Right.
So she was in on it. She helped them plan it. There's no other way to look at this other than an insurrection.
Well, and that's the same congressperson, if I'm not mistaken, who wanted to bring her Glock into the chamber.
Right. Still wants to, fights to. She does everything she can to avoid the metal detectors.
Yeah, but if they avoid a metal detector, the first time it's a $5,000 fine, and the second time it's a $10,000 fine. But if you're determined to kill the Speaker of the House or any other member, for that matter, of the House, I tend to think the bounty on that person was probably bigger than the fine, right? Yeah. I don't know. Hello, because I figured you might be awake at this time of day.
If they really want to kill the Speaker of the House, they'd use a pencil. I mean, you could use anything. So anything is just like anything is a dildo if you try hard enough. Anything is a weapon if you try hard enough. So
hi Kazoom. Welcome to the chat.
Hey, yeah, good to see you. It was interesting to see one done this early, so that's kind of nice for me,
Well,
because right now my sleep schedule is that which I wouldn't be able to make the later ones. So
yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, for me, I just happen to have an hour or two to kill, and I thought it might be nice to go on because, as I was saying to Rob a moment ago, the day before the impeachment, I tried to make a video, and the first version was like an hour, well, 45, 47 minutes long, and I still didn't get to say everything I want to say. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm trying to. I'm not I don't have the patience for editing that you have, Kazoom. So like, yeah. So I thought I'll do another take. So I managed to get it down to half an hour. But then after I was trying to upload that video, and I realized I still left out this, and this, and I'm like, fuck this shit. I'm just gonna do a live stream and try and talk. Yeah. Anyway, so Kazoom, I mean, since we spoke on Saturday, an awful lot of stuff has come out into the public domain. What's the most striking thing that has made you go, whoa, what the fuck?
I guess a lot of it would be the some of the conspiracy theories that people like, the whole Q thing. All these stupid conspiracy theories that have just like no chance of coming true. But the people who buy into I know people I there are people I actually know, not just comments on YouTube or something. There's people that like I've known on Facebook for like 10 years. There's a couple people that I've actually met in person, and they go with all of this stuff, these stupid conspiracy theories, like okay, they're shoving forth that, oh, this weekend the military is going to come and arrest a bunch of politicians and stuff, and it's just like, what are you
Maybe the
talking about?
paramilitary might try it, but the actual military is too smart for that. I mean, what? Okay, here's something that we have seen though. I mean, we discussed this a bit on Saturday night, but and we don't know at this moment what the level of cooperation stroke infiltration is, both within Congress and the Capitol Police. But clearly, someone in charge of organization of that policing event, not only should their head roll for incompetence, but to me, I think the conspiracy is vast, but that's just me. Y'all know me, right?
There's about, as of yesterday, I don't know what the number is now, but as of yesterday, about 70 people, I believe, have been arrested. Um, a disturbingly large number of those people were policemen.
Right.
And in this kind of a thing, one cop is too many, and that's disturbing. But there are several that were police officers from all over the country. That's frightening. That's frightening. I mean, it kind of goes with that, that saying, which actually is from Rage Against the Machine song. Those who
Yeah.
work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and apparently it's there's a certain amount of truth to that. So
No, that's terrifying to contemplate. So what, on Saturday night, we talked a little bit about how much worse it could have been. And now we've had more details. Kazoom, before you got here, I was mentioning to Rob, I don't know if you saw in the news, Kazoom, but Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley had the panic buttons removed from her room without her knowledge prior to the insurrection on Wednesday. So basically, had she been trapped in her office and gone for the panic button, it would not have been there. So someone not only had access to her office, but they managed to get in and out of there with tools and rip out stuff. So not only get in, but to get out and to get in and do stuff for long enough, that suggests serious inside coordination.
here's something
Very
crazy.
much.
Oh yeah. Here's something crazy. There are people like saying, "Oh, why were Congress people all upset that their laptops were stolen or potentially could have been stolen? What are they hiding?" And it's just like, are you people stupid? I mean, these are our legislators. Their laptops are going to be full of government secrets, of security. So, I mean, just because they're upset or need to protect their laptops doesn't mean they're involved in anything nefarious. It means they're guarding, classified information.
Yeah, I want to just to address Mr. CRB Vegas here. Not trying to minimize it. It was awful. At the same time, feels like the country is on the brink. It is. We should take care not to further aggravate things out of hand. I agree with the sentiment of that, but I don't draw conclusions like, so therefore we have to, oh, I don't know, not impeach Trump, for example. No, the president deserved what he got on Wednesday, and whatever is coming from the Senate, he deserves that as well. I think it's interesting because right before you got here, I was saying to Rob that I kind of think there's people in Congress who still think that Trump might pull it off, and that's why they're reserving judgment. I also think there's some members of the Senate who they could have voted. You know, they could have already voted in the Senate to impeach Trump if they really wanted to. If Mitch McConnell wanted to, he has the power to call back the Senate in less than 24 hours. So, I mean, like when the United States got attacked December 7th, 1941, Congress convened and declared war the next day. So when it's an emergency, they can get big shit done just like that. And an insurrection is most definitely an emergency. So I don't accept the political machinations which suggest that, hey, you know, the fastest we can do it is 1 o'clock on Wednesday after Joe Biden. I don't accept that. My personal hunch, I guess, it's no more than one man's hunch, is that they're waiting to see how much worse it gets on Sunday, and they're also waiting to see how much more incriminatory evidence there might be so that when they do come back, there'll definitely be enough senators to convict the president.
Here's the thing. As of Wednesday at noon, Mitch McConnell is no longer the majority leader. So he has no right or business to schedule anything as far as the impeachment, if it's going to take place after inauguration. That's no longer his job. That'll now be Schumer's job. So there's that. And also, I think that he's holding off because I think it'll be easier for the rank and file of the Republican Party to deal with that kind of a thing if Trump is no longer in office, if he's already gone. Once he's gone, it's like throw all the stones you want at him. He's not the president anymore. You know, there's going to be always going to be the diehard followers and believers, but I think overall it'd be easier for the party as a whole to swallow if he's not the sitting president.
I think a lot
of
sorry, go ahead, Case.
Well, the people with the terrorist kind of mindsets on the far right and within the whole Trump cult thing, the people that the type of people that carried out the attack on the Capitol, they've made threats that if Trump is impeached before the end of his term, that they're going to strike. And that could be on some people's minds as well.
Okay, but here's the thing. It's almost worth doing it to spite them because you can't. Otherwise, you might look like you're bending to the will of, you know, the threats.
Negotiating with terrorists.
I can barely hear you, man.
He said negotiating with terrorism.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can't sign a contract under duress. All right. If you sign a contract with a gun to your head, later on, you're not going to be held liable for signing the contract because you signed it under duress. And I think an awful lot of people in Republicans, mostly that are reluctant to go this far with Trump and to impeach him, they're still thinking inside this box, which we've been basically forced to think inside of, and that is the almighty power of Trump over his base, which I think is largely bullshit because most of it was based on Trump's perception of invincibility. And I think I'm acquainted with a lot of Republicans who are through my partner. I've become acquainted with more Republicans than I've ever known in my life, and the funny thing is, you know, a lot of these people are fairly well-to-do, and yet they're completely disgusted by the president. They never supported this particular president anyway, and so there is definitely like a core of Republicans out there who find this appalling and reprehensible. But is there enough of them to take the party back over from the Trumpers? I don't personally think it even matters if there's enough of them, because you cannot let one of the two major parties become an extremist party. They have to purge these extremists.
The idea that the far left is just as bad as the far right is kind of ridiculous. Sorry. The idea that the far left is just as bad as the far right is kind of ridiculous. The far left wants you to have, good food, healthcare, good jobs, education. The far right wants to destroy the government. So, I mean, to compare the two is ridiculous. It's apples and oranges. Actually, it's like apples and avocados. I mean, it's you know,
Well, I
I,
mean, there's some sides to the left that when it goes far enough left, it starts to go into suppression of actual free speech and trying to control how much people can consume and what can be made, what can be consumed. I mean, I mean, either side can get equally authoritarian. Now, are they at this time? No, but they both can become just as equally authoritarian.
anything can become just about. I mean, anything when you're talking about political movements or ideologies. I mean, there's always, an ebb and flow to these things. But I mean, when you start talking about, they want to control what you can consume. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. I think there's a certain amount of things that should be under government control as far as what can be consumed. As far not necessarily what you're eating or smoking, but consumption as in, consumer consumption kind of a thing. There should be certain things. I mean, the right wing has been freaking out for years about light bulbs. It's like, give me a fucking break. Incandescent light bulbs are horrible. They're horrible for the environment. They last forever. They're terrible as far as energy consumption. That's the kind of thing I think the government should say, hey, you cannot consume incandescent light bulbs anymore. Fuel consumption. There's something else that that the government wants to control, and the far left thinks should be controlled. And I agree. It should be. It should be because there's no jobs on a dead planet. So I mean, it really depends on what you're talking about.
When you say fuel consumption, what do you mean? Do you mean like people shouldn't be able to drive or what?
You don't need gasoline to drive. You don't need oil to drive. Oil products are killing everyone.
Okay. So it's basically the push towards electric vehicles mainly.
Well, not necessarily electric, but sure, whatever fuel works that isn't a fossil fuel.
Okay.
yeah, I'm personally, Kazum, you're way braver. You're totally intrepid when it comes to searching out the far left and the far right, and I really respect the fact that you try to keep like, I don't know how you do it, man. I'd go nutty, frankly, if I expose myself to all the toxic bullshit you expose yourself to. So.
And
I don't mean
it's probably not healthy of me to do, but
it's not. I was actually just going to say not to knock you at all, but there are certain aspects of some viewpoints scattered across the spectrum that I have noticed that you talk about as if you've absorbed them. And I think there's some overconsumption of hey, we go at consumption again. Some overconsumption of certain points of view. We've had these discussions on the Breakfast Club and on Facebook, and it's just
Yeah.
like, dude, what are you talking about? No, and you come back with the yes. It's like no, Kazoom, you're wrong. And I don't blame you. I just kind of think you overexpose yourself to some of that stuff. But hey, man, that's all
I
you.
get it though, man,
That's all
because he
you.
wants to be well informed. He wants to have an informed opinion. He wants to,
I agree.
wants to not write other people's opinions off without consideration. I totally get it.
It's hard not to become, you know, immersed in it sometimes. And not just some of the right wing stuff that Kazoom has espoused. I think for anybody, for everyone, that's why I wouldn't do what he does. I wouldn't do what he does. I'll look, I'll peek. That's about it. Because after a while, I just can't stomach it anymore, and I don't want to start myself being influenced by things that just aren't true. So I just as soon just stay away from it.
Hey, Kazoom, have you? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just have a tendency to try to figure out what makes people tick. Even people that I think are terrible, I still want to know what makes them tick. Why do they think the way they do? What brought them to this mindset? And how does the way they think affect the way they do everything too. It's interest human psychology. It's interesting to me.
I feel the same way, but I after 23 years on the internet, I've learned to, for my peace of mind, I've learned that, basically if I open the door and I see the room's on fire, I'm going to close the door. I'm just going to close the door,
Yeah, and that's the bravery that he was talking about, because
Right.
you don't necessarily close that door. You'll take a step in. Me, I might look for marshmallows. If I don't have any, I'm out.
I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen the graphic, and unfortunately, I haven't. I don't know if there's any paper for me to draw it on. But have you guys ever heard of the Golden Arches political scale?
I have not.
Okay, so the Golden Arches is the McDonald's symbol, right? So I want you both to visually picture the Golden Arches in your head, and viewers obviously do the same thing. So you got the Golden Arches, and at the bottom of the left one, you've got far left politics. At the bottom of the right one, you've got far right politics. And in the middle, you've got centrism. Then at the top of both curves, you've got normal people. And at the bottom of the M, you've got the extremists. Because there is such a thing as extreme centrism, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole for this video. But centrism,
That's extreme centrist. Sorry, extreme centrist. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I do mean to cut you off. Extreme centrist is basically all of the Democrats that are currently in government. So
yeah,
you end up getting the worst of both sides.
Right, exactly. Well put. And look, I saw Exiled in the chat, and now we have Mr. Exiled, and that's okay to put it that way. Brian, how's it going, Brian?
Absolutely. Refer to me as Mr. Exiled all you wish. That's absolutely fine by me. She was always the bigger YouTuber than I was, so that's absolutely fine.
Right. So welcome to the show, Brian. I'm sure you've been following current events with some interest from across the pond, and you have the benefit of years of not having been subjected to the constant brainwashing that America is the shining city on the hill and the example for the world and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of us who have been brought up with that brainwashing who really would like to believe it again, and at the moment it just seems it's a quaint notion that we ever were that really anyway. But I mean, right now I saw politicians say it on the floor of Congress during the impeachment trial. I can't remember. We need to return America to the shining city on the hill. And I'm like, motherfucker, you need to find a hill. You need to find all the wood and the bricks and everything and start building that city from scratch, because the hill that you thought was there is smoldering right now.
Well, you've lived a number of years in this land. So you have seen some of the exposure that we have to the Americas, particularly North America and Canada, and the direct knock-on effect that your politics has on our politics. So whilst I agree with your sentiment that, before you can actually, put a buff on that thing again, you have to build it. I hear where you're coming from, but that does not necessarily mean that the rest of the world is not looking to you at this moment to see how you deal this crisis.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, I mean, and this is an acid test for whether America really is America or whether it was all just for show, and that's also internal. That's internal for us as well. There's an awful lot of people who are so disillusioned right now, and I'm going to bring up CRB Vegas again because this is actually a worthy thing to discuss. What happened at the Capitol leaves me embarrassed. I'm not worried, but it feels like much of the left would love to use this as a catalyst to subjugate Trump supporters. Okay, you may or may not mean something different, but the word subjugate, I would absolutely object to. Nobody wants to subjugate anybody else. At the very worst, most harsh thing I would like these people to do is to just believe facts. That's what I would like. I just want Trump supporters to believe facts. That's it.
Yeah, I mean the word
Couldn't agree
subjugate.
more.
I read that, and the word subjugate kind of jumped out to me too. I was like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, subjugate means you put yourself over them, and I don't want to put myself over any American.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, as far as left and right is concerned, as far as I am aware, Democrats and the left kind of the whole idea of everyone being created equal is
Right.
basically the central core value of everything that Democrats and left tries to do. It everything. That's what all the equality movements have been about. That's
Well,
all of them.
sorry
It's
to
been the
just
center of it.
sorry to jump in on you, Dev, but isn't that principle enshrined in your founding documents?
No.
Quote it for me, Brian. I'll be very impressed.
No, it's not.
It,
It's not. And there's
the
and
Declaration of Independence is the founding document that I'm talking about,
Okay,
where
right.
we, the
yes,
people, created
all men.
equal under all men under God,
Right.
blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at
So,
the
not
time,
the exact quote you were looking for, Paul, but I hope it was close enough to get
I
half
I
a
know what
brownie
part you're
point.
talking about anyway. Yeah.
at the time, what was considered to be a free man or men created equal were white rich men.
Right.
It didn't count slaves, and the black people were not considered equal. So I mean, even in the Constitution, black people were what 3/5 of a person. Um, so
All I can say to that, to your founding fathers in retrospect, is be careful what you write down because somebody might actually take you literally.
very true. Very true. But I mean, the entire left movement, the Democrats, the central core belief is that we are all equal.
Mm.
So
I just want to ask Kazoom really quickly. Speaking for myself, I can remember when I first started seeing online chat about Second Civil War, and at first it was on Twitter. There was like a hashtag where it was like Second Civil War war letters, where you wrote "Dear Martha," blah blah blah. It was kind of funny, but when
it
I
was it was fun.
yeah, when I first became aware of that, that was late 2017. Okay, so we're talking about 2.5, 3. Well, so I suppose 3.5 years now that people have been openly talking about how great it would be to have a second civil war. Kazoom, when did you start becoming aware of the second civil war chatter?
Well, I mean, I did see it a little bit in 2017. It just kept picking up more and more every year. But it's especially been in 2020 after COVID restrictions came into place and everyone's locked in their homes, sort of, so to speak. Uh, that whole thing just started to increase by tenfold. That kind of thinking started to, it's everyone feeling like they're stuck and they're restricted, and it's affected the mindset of so many people, and I just think, yeah, I think that's the main factor that's made this worse.
What do you think about the fact that in I think it was May, it was not long after we started doing these jamborees, but yeah, right after we started doing these jamborees, Trump did liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia, liberate was it Wisconsin, the other one? And hang on,
Are you saying
and the thing is that at the time I remember on this show saying that's clear incitement, and I think that a week after he did that, they showed up at the Capitol in Lansing, armed to the teeth, and the cops barely had any resistance for them. You all remember that. We talked about it on the show. I think that was a dry run. I think they were testing reactions. Would Trump be, would people say he was inciting them? Leftists were saying it, but nobody on the right was saying it. Go ahead, Brian.
I have one question. Liberate from who? If you're talking liberation from the government, then that would make some sense because 'tis the government that rules over the people, albeit by the people's consent. But that makes no sense from a MAGA point of view because that would mean a revolt against Trump's administration. So again, when POTUS says take back your country from whom? He's the one that's running the show.
Well, right now the big thing is people are scared. They're literally convinced that Biden will basically be a puppet to the CCP. They truly believe this. They think that once Biden is president, that this is no longer the United States. That's what they're thinking.
That's because that's what they've been told by right-wing media
Right.
for a long time now, not just like just a recent thing. It's something that the right has been like pounding into their skulls for years. Democrats are communists and socialists. Democrats are communists and socialists. They're gonna make your children transgender, Satan-worshiping vegans. And take your guns. This is what they've been saying for years, and none of it is true. Vegas wants to talk about, the left deplatforming people, and it really depends on what you mean by deplatforming. If you mean Twitter and Facebook telling people that they can't use their service, well, no, that's not the left deplatforming. That right there is private companies that are enforcing. They're enforcing their own terms of service,
Which they should have been doing for years.
which they should have been doing for years,
That
right?
really bothered me, because if Trump had been held to the same standard, and that's not just Trump, about when it comes to Twitter, I'm talking about, it's not just Trump. Anybody with a blue tick next to their name has special latitude that people without a blue tick like me or any of y'all are not going to get the same latitude. They'll ban me, or they won't ban me. They'll suspend me for 2 weeks for hate speech. I would never do hate speech, but if I did, they wouldn't think twice about suspending me. Trump has had multiple examples of what other people would get kicked off for as hate speech, but because he's the president, it was deemed like newsworthy and of public discussion, so they left it up. If you're going to have a platform like Facebook or MySpace or anything else, you need to uniformly apply the rules. This is especially true about like YouTube as well. I mean, they do not. There's tiers of acceptability in YouTube. If you don't have enough followers, you don't count.
I'd say Trump went 10 times beyond what even other people who have a check mark by their name would be able to say. He's went way over even other blue check marks, and he still didn't get banned until this very end. So
Yeah, but he's the leader of the free world, supposedly. So
Yeah.
If Trump was president, I hardly ever hear anyone use that phrase describing the president, the leader of the free world. I mean,
I was using it sardonically.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Most people don't use it when talking about Trump. They don't use it seriously. It's always sardonic. It's always yeah. It's Vegas talking about AOC and her comments pertaining to lists, and also about the popular idea of truth and reconciliation commissions, apparently like South Africa had. As far as lists of people who enabled Trump, I think that there are certain people within the Republican Party and outside the Republican Party that may have enabled Trump and some of the things that he's done that should be investigated, because we are a nation of laws. And if laws have been broken, those people need to be brought to justice. You might not like it. You might see that as some kind of leftist, plot, but that shows your own biases more than anything else.
I have to both agree and disagree. I agree with literally every word you just said. However, when it comes, there's a thing about lists. All right, when the 17 DAs around the country were writing that letter to try to get the Supreme Court to overturn the results of the election, and then on the first day they had 106 House reps, and the second day they had bumped that number up to 126 House reps. And I read a news article, I think it was in Politico, but I could be wrong. It might have been Mother Jones or something like that, that said when it was 106 Republican reps, apparently Trump was taking names and putting them on a list of Republicans who did not sign up to his agenda about objecting to the election. So Trump was taking lists. And my first thought was this, so that when the coup happens, he's going to know who he wants to purge. So making lists, and it's only a matter of nuance, because, to quote Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, justice is merely the opinion of the ruling power. I mean, a construct of the ruling power. I mean, unfortunately, that is more true than it is false. And so I think what CRB Vegas might be driving at is if we're drawing up lists of co-conspirators prior to investigation, that would definitely be a problem. If investigations naturally lead to more people going on a list of suspects, that's a completely different thing.
And let's not forget, I mean, the idea of lists, like you had just said about Trump, he's a list maker himself. But the idea of lists is not a leftist thing at all. I mean, you
No.
got people on the right who have been for a long time now demanding that atheists be put on a list,
Right.
that gay people be put on a list. And I mean, we're not just talking about people in the street. We're talking about people hold at least a small amount of power. I mean, you got what's his face, Scott Lively, who had gone to other countries and demanded that other countries execute gay people, and that he wanted to keep a list of gay people in the U.S. So when
Yeah.
people start talking about lists, I check out of that conversation because you're wrong.
Yeah, when it comes to the idea of lists, there are a number of lists that I would wonder if you would drop, Mr. CRB Vegas. For example, the pedophiles living in your area list, or the I don't know,
Terrorist watch list.
terrorist watch list. There you go. So yeah, when it comes to lists, yeah, you need to really be a little bit more specific when it comes to the context of that list.
I wanted to
think.
go ahead, Rob.
No, I just wanted to say that, it was interesting that in his comment that the only elected official that he mentioned was AOC. And AOC is such a punching bag for the right and for libertarians in particular. And the problem with your arguments, they are either completely lying about what she said, they're misconstruing what she said, or they just don't understand. Or even worse yet, is they have no idea about American history, even fairly recent modern history. They complain about AOC wants to raise taxes. Yeah, on people who are making over $200,000, and she wants to raise it to a point that is still below what the tax rate was for those same people in the 1950s to the 1980s. That isn't socialism. That's what built this country. So yeah, she's an awful, horrible person because she believes in something as American as making rich people pay their due, as they have for many, many, many years.
I'd just like to make a quick point when it comes to American socialism and American socialists.
All three of them.
They're not.
Even Bernie, yeah, even Bernie Sanders, yeah, is is right on our political compass.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, no, sorry.
One more thing I wanted to say about taking lists and stuff, and with all due respect to CRB Vegas and anybody else who thinks that basically here's my thing. The people who were bent on, it has been reported on the news this morning that we now know for sure that there were plots to take hostages and assassinate elected officials. This is now known, right? They weren't just going to, they might have just grabbed anybody that they recognized. And we've probably, all of us have seen the footage of Lindsey Graham trying to go home after the impeachment debate and getting harassed at the airport. I don't know if you all saw, but there was a congressperson from California. I don't know what district he represented. And I've never seen him before. He's not one of the people that you regularly see on the news. So if it wasn't for this news item I'm about to talk about, I would not know this guy from Adam. I would not know him at all, right? Anyway, this relatively obscure, not famous California House of Representatives who his own constituents probably wouldn't recognize, also got recognized on the airport after the insurrection on his way back home. This obscure California congressman had people in his face at the airport departure lounge, and to his great credit, he was right back in their face. He was ready to throw punches, man. I'm not kidding. But here's the thing. If these 20 or so insurrectionists can recognize an obscure California congressperson who Californians wouldn't even recognize? There is a fucking list. There's a target list amongst the penetrators of Congress. Carry on, Brian.
There's another comment that CRB Vegas makes that I would actually like to address. It's the last one. It starts, guys, I'm saying I would caution you not to casually assume the worst. That's the first point I would like to address. This isn't casual. Certainly, as far as my perspective goes, I have seen a lot of leeway and a lot of patience and a lot of standing back when it comes to what, air quote, MAGAs will and will not do. And to put it as bluntly and as kindly as I can, and that may be a bit of a challenge, but what does it actually take for you guys? And this is something that I commented under one of your videos today, Kazoo. What would it actually take for you guys on the extreme right, the MAGAs, those that are prepared to riot, who think that this is patriotism, not revolution, who think that this is a duty, not all of this stuff? If we give your arguments the best possible, what's the word I'm looking for? Credence? No, empathy. I'll use the word that you used. If we try to be as empathetic and assume your sincerity as we can, then what will it actually take for you guys to acknowledge that Trump lost an election in a fair and judicious manner? Okay, I'm not asking you to speak for the extreme right.
Yeah,
For
and
you as an individual, what would it take? Would it literally take Trump coming on camera saying, I'm sorry, I lied to you about the election. I did lose fair and square. Joe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States.
I think I'm going to jump in on that real quick. Two things. Number one, if Donald Trump stood in front of TV cameras and said that I lied, Joe Biden won the election fair and square, I'm sorry. If Trump actually got up and said all those things, 1 billion people would die from shock.
I think actually, Paul, I think if Trump were to go on TV and to say that he lied, that Joe Biden was fairly elected, then that everything was on the up and up, Trump would face death threats from his followers. I think a lot of these people are just they have erections over the thought of overthrowing the government. Kazum agrees with me.
Kazum, have you got, because that, just quickly, I would like to acknowledge a correction with regards CRB Vegas. I was just assuming, and I know if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, and I hold my hand up, guilty. I assumed from the comments that you were leaving that you were in support of the, of the MAGAs. So my apologies if that's not the case.
I kind of want to kind of piggyback what some of Brian was saying, though. Like, be empathetic and try to assume sincerity. We are. We are assuming the sincerity that these people wanted to kill legislators, that they wanted to do exactly what they said they wanted to do, which was to take the building, which was out of their own mouths while they were doing it. We do. I am assuming that they're sincere. I am assuming that they are sincere, that they hate certain members of the citizenry, that there are Americans that they don't like, that they don't want to be Americans, that they want to withhold from those people the title of citizen. Black people, brown people, gay people. I absolutely believe that they're sincere in that. This country is a powder keg, which is exactly why every single one of these people needs to be hauled in and charged,
Absolutely.
because law and order is the only thing that is going to fix it.
I wanted to say further to a point we spoke about a little while ago. Ayanna Pressley had her panic buttons removed from her room prior to the insurrection, so that speaks to a coordination. We've all seen reports about how there were tours of the Capitol complex going on the 5th of January, the day before the insurrection, and there's no way, because of the coronavirus, that regular citizens aren't allowed in the Capitol unless escorted by someone who works in the Capitol. So it's confirmed that someone, either a person, a member of Congress, and or his or her staff members, took groups of Trump supporters around the complex to show them the place. Now, it's also said, I also said a moment ago that it's come out that we know for sure they were planning on taking hostages and doing assassinations. That being the case, it only takes one, mind you, hostage. But that being the case, how they managed to get their hands on let's just say a high profile hostage like Pelosi or AOC or Mitch McConnell or any high profile politician, really, it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have to be high profile, but if they had a high profile one, they would still be holding that person hostage right now in the Capitol. This shit would never have slowed down or stopped. If they actually got their hands on hostages, it would still be going on. And I think that was the whole plan. This was what happened on Wednesday wasn't supposed to end on Wednesday. They were supposed to get those hostages, hold those hostages for an indefinite period of time, which would completely interrupt the work of Congress. It would also potentially stop the inauguration on Wednesday next week. So, because anything, oh, you can't hold hostages for that long. They held hostages in Iran for more than 400 days back in from 79 to 1980. So I don't accept that hostage situations are easy to resolve. Not at all. So
I am left wondering what these people thought would happen. Like, I mean, I think it's pretty clear what their obvious goals were. But what did they think would actually happen? What did they think would really happen? Did they really think that they could win? Did they
yes,
really think that this would be successful? Which
yes.
makes no sense, though. Like,
That's because you're used to things having to make sense before you do.
You're not in a cult, Rob.
this
Yeah.
this is the most powerful country on the planet with the largest and most well-equipped military, with FBI being the premier law enforcement agency on the planet. What did they think would end up happening? Like, even if they were able to breach and hold the building, if they were able to grab a hold of at least a few legislators and put them in the zip ties and have their fake trials, this wasn't going to end well for them. Even if some of their goals were met, this
I
was
know.
not going
I
to
gotta
end
go,
well.
Brian. I gotta go because this is one of the main things I wanted to talk about today. So thank you for that, Rob. Because it's my opinion, as I said on Saturday, any coup attempt is predicated on success, and to that end, people who perpetrate a coup have to be prepared to be as ruthless as they have to be in order to make it a success. Because if the attempt fails, they all go down together. And trust me, if Trump goes down, he ain't going down alone. Hell no. He'll cut a deal if he has to. He'll cut a deal and narc on everybody if it keeps him out of trouble, right? That's just the nature of Trump. But anyways, as regards to go ahead, Rob.
I want Brian actually typed in the private chat. He typed what he was going to say, and I think we should talk about this really quickly out loud. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question was merely okay. We want to be as empathetic and grant as much sincerity as possible. Yeah, but what was the gallows for?
Now, on the gallows that were hanging there, and I agree with you, but on the gallows, the actual structure, when they put it up, there's a sign that says, "This is art."
Actually, you remind me of something else I was going to say, because one of the objections of several members when they were objecting to the impeachment process from the Republican side, one of the objections they said was Trump never told anybody to go down there and riot. you know, and I object to this in the strongest fucking possible terms. I'm so sick and tired of saying, you know, dog whistles don't count and all this kind of bullshit. Because here it is, man. You can't say, let me put it to you another way. Are we really prepared to say that if you're clever with language, you can incite a riot? But if you openly say, go and burn down that building, then we're going to prosecute you? If you say, but what about if you say, go down there and do what needs to be done? You all know what needs to be done. If that's not incitement, I don't know what the fuck is. And that's basically what he fucking said. This idea that he never said storm the Capitol, or he never said go riot, or he never said take hostages, so it's not incitement. What a fucking bunch of bullshit, man. It makes my fucking blood boil. Can you tell?
You know, it reminds me of the how on YouTube of the past, someone with like over 200,000 subscribers or whatever, right? They would bully a channel that might have 50 or less subscribers, and the all of that person's subscribers would go to that little channel's you know, comment section and just make fun of them and belittle them, and the big YouTuber would say, what, I didn't tell them to do any of that, I didn't say that directly. And it's just like, well, do you not understand like cause and effect? Do you just not get it? And it's the same thing here.
Yeah, I mean, there is and not just like really small channels. I mean, there were like big channels that would, you know, tell their followers, "Hey, look at this other channel, whether they're big or small," and say this person sucks. But I'm not telling you to go to their channel and leave a comment. I'm not saying that. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, that's the entire point of bringing it up. I mean, the message is clear. So yeah,
It's like when people tweet something and then say, Donald Trump would really hate it if you retweeted this. You know?
yeah. I mean, I do that every day.
I have one other question that may be disturbing. I know you want to wrap this up, Paul, but I think it is an important question. We know that on the 6th, there were a number of ex-military and ex-service types. And I know this is delving or dipping a toe in the conspiracy rabbit hole. But what if there are other members of the currently deployed armed services, particularly the National Guards, that are actually sympathetic to Trump?
Well, this is something that while it was happening was very much on my mind, and while the second wave of insurrection coming up this weekend is equally on my mind for the same reason, because it's clear that there's been significant infiltration, or at the very least, sympathetic ears and arms in organs of not just law enforcement, but also within politics. And I think, as regard and the military, and as regard, I mean, the way back, I guess it must have been 1983. You might recall, Brian. Indira Gandhi got assassinated. She was the Prime Minister of India, and she was assassinated by one of her own security guards, as I recall.
Yeah, she was.
And that is, by any stretch of the imagination, a coup, right? When you, and so it has occurred to me that the quickest way for Trump to dispatch Joe Biden would be to have him assassinated right before he takes the oath of office, you know? Because here's the thing, man, there's clearly been some level of infiltration and or cooperation in the Capitol Police that has a whole chain of people who made decisions, and they're already on the news setting up the same fucking bullshit after 9/11. Oh, it was a series of failures in blah blah, you know, a series of systematic failures which caused bullshit. When what you know, you might have one failure, two failures, three failures, even 4 or 5 failures, and they all might happen at the same time. That might be coincidental. But when you've got a series of failures that all led up to the same thing, I think it's fair to say I see evidence of a conspiracy there, because you can't get everyone failing at the same time on the same day, especially when we all knew there was going to be violence at the Capitol. We talked about it on this fucking show, right? We knew.
We did. The week before it happened.
weeks before it happened, and the security people definitely knew. They definitely knew. So the fact is, it's not just a matter, it's a legitimate conversation to have, to say, why were these white protesters treated differently than the black protesters of the summer, or not just black protesters, but BLM supporters, which are mostly not black, were treated completely differently over the summer. That's a legitimate conversation to have, but it's not just that these people were treated differently. They were acceded to, their acquiescence from the Capitol Police. We've seen the footage of the selfies. We've seen the footage of them getting let in. We've seen footage of them giving them directions around the fucking Capitol. So at the very least, there were some of those Capitol Police people were sympathetic with the rioters. Whether or not they were under any direction to do what they did is an open question and requires investigation. I'm not going to come to a prejudged conclusion on that, other than to say, you can't, I think you can't get sympathy to the cause of the rioters. Personally, I don't think would make you do something which later on, if you get caught, you're going to get charged for the felony. That's why I say everybody in on this. I think this is a vast conspiracy, and the reason I think that is because they almost got away with it. And if Trump had succeeded and was still president on January 21st, there would have been no impediment whatsoever for him to pardon everyone involved on the basis that they did the right thing, according to Trump.
Yeah, but that predicates on any attempted coup being unsuccessful, because as we know, it is the winners of these things that write the history of them. So let's just indulge this for a second.
Okay.
And let's just say that on the 20th, some rogue National Guards person does in fact manage to assassinate not just Joe Biden, but his successor, Kamala. Now, by my understanding, there is a line of succession that would possibly not end up back at Trump for maybe 10 people.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
There's a line of succession. Yeah, you've got the president, then you've got the vice president, and then you've got a few other people that are in.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, presumably those would be from Biden's administration. But at some point, and I'm not sure where that cutoff point is, the power base would revert to the outgoing president.
Yeah.
Am I right? No?
Not once.
Okay.
Once. This is why I think everything had to happen before Biden gets inaugurated. But maybe I'm wrong about this. But there is a line of succession. It goes from the president to the vice president to the Speaker of the House. Then it goes, I believe, to the minority leader of the House as the fourth person in the line of succession. And then I'm not even sure who's in the fifth. It's all written down, I think, in the 25th Amendment. The line.
Right.
And had they been successful in taking hostages at the Capitol on Wednesday, let us not forget that they had the vice president, who's the next in line in that building. They had Nancy Pelosi, who's the next after that in line in that building. They had Mitch McConnell, who may or may not be in the line of succession. I can't remember, but he was also in that building. They could have and Kamala Harris, the next successor. So they could have, had they been like completely successful and got into the chambers before anybody realized they needed to evacuate the chambers, they could have decapitated the entire line of succession and therefore given us no alternative but to keep Trump until we can get Biden inaugurated. And if Trump, if they had got that far, Trump would control Washington, and the city itself would have been held hostage for who knows how long. And Biden, I think, still would get inaugurated. I think there are enough forces in the United States who revere democracy and the systems that we have depended on for 244 years, so that he would have gotten it anyway. And then we would have had, but getting to the point that I was going to make before, Brian, and it's too bad Rob is gone now, because this insurrection plot that's ongoing, in my opinion, they really thought Rob asked earlier, did they really think they were going to get away with it? Yes, they thought they were going to get away with it because they thought they would have hostages. They thought they were going to be ongoing. They thought that we could stop this inauguration from happening. They were living in a fantasy land. I get that. But we've all known that for the past 4 years. This fantasy has been allowed by people like me. I've been bitching about it the whole time, but the bottom line is I don't even know what people like me can do to stop this kind of cult from forming and taking over a political party. But something needs to be done. And I think banning Trump from Facebook and Twitter was on Saturday. We discussed it, and I didn't really realize how much Trump had infiltrated our thinking. But now that he's had his mouthpieces basically taken away, I mean, he could call a press conference anytime he wants, right? He's the president. But the fact is that he has lost his direct line into your house and into my house. He had a line directly into our brains. And I am as guilty as anyone because I have spent so many nights over the past 4 or 5 years unable to sleep because I'm pissed off or scared about what Trump's doing or going to do, So.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I've actually utilized it for my radio show quite heavily. I think humorously. So I've managed to generate a lot of humor from a lot of the contention. I hope. Certainly that was the intention. But I'd just like to just clarify something for CRB Vegas just now. That was a thought experiment. Not taken seriously. It was just a what if scenario.
Right. I do kind of want to wrap the show up pretty soon because I don't have a lot more time left here before I've got to actually do things in my normal life. But the upcoming events this weekend, guys. I just saw on the TV, which is on mute at the moment, but I just saw on the TV Gretchen Whitmer saying that the Capitol building in Lansing is not safe. And she said, it's not my job to sugarcoat it. We're not safe here now. And Lansing, of course, in Michigan is the site of where the armed guys were over the summer. And Michigan is one of the more, has a reputation anyway. I've never been to Michigan, so I should say that out loud. But I mean, Michigan has the reputation of having a lot of people who are very enthusiastic gun owners. All right. And I don't, for the record, viewers, I don't have a problem with people owning guns. All right. But anyway, but Michigan does have that reputation. We saw the armed people there end of the spring, beginning of summer, whatever it was. Michigan's only one state. Now, Gretchen Whitmer's come in for severe criticism from Trump over the past 7 or 8 months because of the coronavirus. And so she has been, and we had the foiled kidnap plot where they were going to kidnap her and try her and hang her and all that stuff. And the FBI
some trial.
Huh?
I was going to say some trial if they'd already decided to hang her.
Well, I mean, it's a Ceausescu kind of thing. They were going to give her the Ceausescu treatment. It's a mock trial and probably hang her from a fucking street pole, just like Ceausescu, whatever.
Gotcha. We don't know if she's a witch, so you might as well throw her in the pond just to be sure. Got it. Yeah.
See if she weighs as much as a goose. Anyway, yeah, but no, the what's going to happen? All 50 states are planning for armed protest. Again, that term pisses me off, but we know for a fact that militias are going to show up all over the country this weekend, starting on Saturday, but the big day is supposed to be Sunday. And how are authorities, the local police and the state police, the National Guard, how are they supposed to handle it? What are the rules of engagement? Because one of the things that people kept saying on Wednesday last week was, how come these people aren't getting shot? Well, there must have been preordained rules of engagement.
Yeah.
There must be.
Good question.
So
that's possibly a question that somebody needs to ask and actually have answered publicly. for everybody.
Well, I saw disturbingly, I saw a report. I think it was yesterday that the online amongst the people talking about favorably about how they intend insurrection, they have rules of engagement for when it's okay to shoot and when it's not. When it's okay to shoot a cop and when it's not. When it's okay to shoot a National Guard person and when it's not. They've got rules of engagement.
Okay, well, Phoenix Wright has informed us in the chat, obviously this is unverified, that the National Guard in DC have been given the authority to use deadly force when needed.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've already been authorized to use deadly force when needed. So the discretion therefore becomes, is it needed or not? You know? And I suppose, okay, they've got a huge perimeter around the Capitol right now. Is breaching the barrier, as soon as someone gets over, is that the moment you kill them? Or do you kill them when they get to the Capitol? I mean, at what point is it needed, in quotation marks? You know what I mean? I don't know.
I would imagine that the very least that anybody would be accepting of, for example, if you were that cop that was getting crushed that we saw on film, I don't think anybody would have criticized him had he shot at that point or in the moments leading up to that point. And yeah, by the way, what if, as Green Machine points out, if you dismiss the what ifs, what if what happened will happen again? Considering the what ifs is actually called preparing yourself.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Preparing for.
Kazoom, you're not going to strap on an AK and go down to Olympia just to protect your state, are you?
No.
Are you going to be standing outside your front door with an AK just to protect yourself and property?
Nope, I don't have any firearms, not right now anyway. I mean, if next year, makes it seem like I'm going to have to, then I might, but I certainly don't have one now, so.
One follow-up question. Will you be taking a tent and a week's supplies and going up into the forests?
Negative.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't own any firearms, and I live in such a remote place. It really doesn't seem necessary to me to acquire one. But like Kazoom just said a minute ago, even though I'm like a peaceful person and I can't imagine any circumstance which I would actually shoot someone. I mean, it depends on how far and how widespread this whole Civil War thing, Civil War II goes. Because if we actually break out into a 50-state internecine war where Americans are killing Americans, what do you do, Kazoom? What do you do if you get a knock at the door, right? And someone shows up with holstered firearms, but they're just regular people, and they say, which side are you on? What do you do? Because you don't know which side they're coming from. What do you do?
All right, I would try to guess and hope that I'm right.
I would say I'm on the side of the Constitution. Which side are you on? And hope that I could have a conversation rather than get shot. Because I certainly can't pretend that I'm on the Trump side. Not just because of my strong moral fucking compass or any of that bullshit. No. I can't pretend I'm on the Trump side because I wouldn't necessarily know if these people were Trumpers or not, because I live in a nice purple state, right? So I wouldn't know. Is it just my neighbors coming down to make sure that, there's none amongst us are going to be doing anything wrong? I mean, who knows? But it's nightmare scenarios like that fucking keep me awake at night, right? Because we live in a country where there's more guns than people.
What bothers me so much is how some of these people that are pushing this insurrection think that they're patriotic. And I just can't wrap my mind around that part about it. How is wanting to overthrow the government patriotic?
Because in the course of human events, I can almost quote from memory the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, and when it says, "When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to separate themselves or something like that from their release themselves from the political ties that bond them to one another." That's what these people think. These people think, like that girl said, today is 1776. These people think they're being patriotic because they think, hilariously, that they're saving the government from tyranny, when in fact, they're trying to install a tyrant. And this is the other thing that really bugs me, is I know so many people who are gun enthusiasts who predicate their enthusiasm for the Second Amendment on the basis that they have been brought up to think that the Second Amendment was put in by the constitutional framers to make sure that citizens could always protect themselves against a tyrannical government. That's their logic. And yet right now, they're going to be using their firearms to protect or embolden or install a tyrant against the will of the people. I've never really been a sort of let's take everybody's guns away kind of guy. But frankly, if you're that stupid, you're too stupid to own a fucking gun.
You need to take a test to be able to drive a car.
Brian, you need to have a license to catch a fucking fish. You're preaching to the choir, okay?
Yeah, you need a license to own a dog. Why should you not be required to take basic competency tests to own a firearm? Just breathing is not enough.
All the competency tests in the world can't stop you from falling prey to a cult of personality. So,
True enough.
I hear you, but yeah.
But the point I'm making is that, yeah, and I know, preaching to the choir, you don't even have those safeguards. Welcome back, Rob. Hi, baby.
Rob, you're just in time. We figured the whole thing out, and we've got a plan.
Okay.
Oh, brother. Listen, I'm going to be, I'm still in St. Louis, obviously, and I'm going to be here for the weekend broadcast as well. Hopefully, when we come back on the weekend, there won't be, it'll all just be a bunch of bluster, and we can laugh about the yahoos. And how, hopefully, and CRB Vegas says up there, everyone is so cynical. And you know what? These are cynical times. And I actually agree that certainly for the moment, I am probably the most cynical version of myself that I've been in many, many years. But there's also another true thing, and Brian can attest to this. Cynicism increases with age. Okay? Quite honestly, it's like this. By the time you're 50, and this can happen to a person way before they're 50, of course, but by the time you're 50, you've lied to your parents, your teachers, your workmates, your best friends, your employers, and you've had the politicians lying to you, the advertisements lying to you, your kids have lied to you, your parents have lied to you, your friends have lied to you. If you're not cynical, you're not paying attention. That's where your mindset gets to be the older that you get. Right. So I have to fight cynicism off like a fucking attacking dragon. OK, because I want to be Mr. Optimistic and Mr. Open-minded. And I want to extend the same courtesies to other people that I hope they extend to me. But
here's the thing, Paul.
But I'm pretty cynical now. I have to admit it. It's a fair.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm going to be 60 soon. And my expectation of the world at large is that in the whole, it's going to lie to me. But I do take comfort in the sincerity of my friends. I do take comfort in the likes of, for example, Kazoom. And Lord love you, Kazoom. I've known you a long time. And I'll be blunt with you here. There have been times when I have thought, Jesus, H, how can somebody be so gullible? But then I have realized that, quite rightly so, you actually have to give brain space to an idea in order to understand it. And it's only once you understand it that you can actually develop opinions on it. And Lord love you for doing it in public so that everybody can see it. Your learning curve,
Absolutely.
warts and all.
I kind of
Kazumi is
feel
the only person I know on the YouTube whose mind is more wide open than mine. I mean, I've put my whole fucking self on my channel over the years. You know what I mean? But Kazum's the only person I've ever seen on the YouTube ever to say, you know what? I was wrong.
all three of us have basically just said the same thing. I kind of feel like now we're piling on Kazoom. Sorry, Kazoom.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
That was meant as a
piling
compliment.
piling
It's
on
meant
is
as a
complimenting.
compliment.
It was very much a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, it was certainly an
Yeah.
intentional compliment because I don't know anybody on YouTube who says, you know what? I goofed. I was wrong. I was mistaken. In fact, it's not just YouTube, the internet in general. How
Well,
many?
that's not strictly true, Paul. I mean, you do it, Rob does it, Kiz does it, I do it, Agent of Doubt does it. There's a whole bunch of people that are quite open to correction.
And you'll notice how popular we are, right? So,
Yeah, that's true. We're not. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Fair comment. Fair comment.
anyway, listen, I do have other things I got to get to do, even though we could carry on conversing about this ad infinitum. So I would like to say special thank you to the people who weren't expecting this to happen, which includes all three of my co-hosts and the people over there who just like said, oh, Breakfast Club, I'm in. Good for you. Republic has said that he had an idea that criticism goes both ways. Paul, you didn't mind questioning elections when you thought Gore won, did you? Questioning elections. Did I? If you mean, did I think the election was illegitimately ran? No, I don't think it was illegitimately ran. And just really quickly, Rob. The bottom line is they stopped counting the votes in 2000. Gore accepted it even though they screwed him. Go ahead, Rob.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with questioning elections. Nothing at all. Question away. As long as your questions are based in fact and assertions can be backed up in reality. Once you've been proven to be wrong, or once your question has been answered, it's time to shut the fuck up and get with the program. If you continue to question things when you've been proven to be wrong, you're no longer just questioning an election, you're looking to overturn it.
Yeah, I would only say question everything, but only as much as is necessary for it to become obvious that this is or isn't true. And one of my mantras: pay attention. It works.
In the very wise words of Benjamin Franklin, don't believe anything you read and only half of what you see. All right. So that's what I've got to say. And I would like to thank my co-hosts and everybody in the side chat. And we'll see you again Saturday night. I have no idea who's going to turn up Saturday night. I never know. So that's how that goes. Rob will be here unless Rob has COVID. Rob will be here. That much I can pretty much rely on. And the rest of you guys, if you come, great. And if you don't, I shall chastise you with a wet noodle. Anyway, I'm going to end the broadcast now. So until next time, peace and joy, y'all. Be safe out there. And don't rebel against the American government.